I am convinced that if we knew the path that everyone walked, if we could see in each moment into each other's hearts and journeys, we would always walk in kindness. We would always walk in love and compassion. I am convinced of this. It's a sign of spiritual awakening, a sign of enlightenment. To be able to presence what might come up, what human emotions and thoughts might come up, but to be able to transmute them into higher expressions of love. Expressions that heal, expressions that acknowledge, and expressions that generate good on earth, good in people's lives. Just think about for a moment the, not necessarily the power of an act of something other than kindness, not necessarily the power of it, but think of your own experience as a human being, right? Is it true that you can have 10 nice things happen? People do or say 10 nice things to you or about you, or you can see 10 nice things in a day. But one awful thing, one bad experience, one nasty thing can happen, right? And it can take a lot of work to heal it, to transform it, to move that energy on, to not get into a rut with something. When something negative comes up, when we hear something awful. Am I alone in this? Is that the best use of our energy? Is that the best use of our creative energy? To have to go around healing and going, okay, it's a loving world, okay. Kindness is here. To shift that. I was just recently at the Nelson Museum. One of my dear friends, Victor Doherty, runs the Temple Buddhist Center, and once a month on third Thursdays, they have a chanting meditation in the Buddhist display. So there's a room, and he leads the chanting in there. And it also is a day of festivities at the museum, because there's also like a really upbeat band and festive other things happening. And at the other festivities that I passed by on the way to and on the way out of this meditation, there was a man there, and he was drawing images. He was an artist, and he was drawing images of people. You know how people come up and then they get their pictures drawn. And he was unique in his way. He was doing watercolors. But I just saw the light in his face and the love in his face, and he was doing this artwork, and people were smiling and laughing and getting their pictures. You know, I saw a couple got their pictures drawn, and then they were all piggybacking each other, and then their dog was on the top, so they must have described what their dog looked like, and the guy put him in the picture. And I just said to the friend that I was there with, I said, he must be a kind guy. He must be a good guy. That must just be a good guy. Like someone that spends their time, whether it was his main, occupation or something that he does, but to spend your time like that, creating joy and creating light. I thought that's a kind man. Kindness matters, doesn't it? I believe that kindness matters. I have a beloved minister friend from the Unity of Sacramento, Reverend Kevin Ross, and he has a beautiful little group of children, and he was talking with his son, and he posted this little video lesson online. He was doing some kind of parenting, fathering moment, and he shared it. You could tell he just had his phone kind of sitting there that, probably no one even knew it was on, but he was showing this interaction and this discussion that he was having with his son, who apparently downloaded some video games without mom and dad knowing on the iPad, and they were some violent video games with killing and and this kind of stuff. And he's a young one. And so he was having a conversation with him about why that wasn't the wise thing to do and why they won't be doing that. And this conversation went on to try to impart the wisdom to his young one that violence is not something to enjoy. That we don't really want to get caught up in practicing it, laughing about it, or making light of it. So he had a conversation about how violence hurts people and really kept it going with him so that his son could start to see that kindness matters. And what happens when we sit in violence? What happens when we laugh when people are hurt? What kind of a person do we want to be? I think we can all take those lessons. I think that the more each of us breathes into our power to cultivate kindness and to share kindness, we'll have a better world. I was reading an article, and the article referenced Pope Francis, and it was, saying, I think it was Time Magazine of the Person of the Year or something like that, and just saying how people are so impressed by Pope Francis. Like, this is just so great and so refreshing. Why? Because he is standing in love, and he is standing in compassion, and he is inviting more people into the fold, and he is trying to help people be kinder people. And it was a funny article because this minister was saying, how weird is it that we are so excited about a holy person doing what a holy person is to do? Like, why is that so odd? Why is that so exceptional? That should be the rule. And not just for a holy person, for all of us, because we know in unity, there is no holier person than you. We are all the Holy One. And so having that practice is essential to an awakening consciousness. The article went on to say, that we can be so deprived in this culture, in this society, of kindness and compassion, of seeing love. We can be just so hungry and thirsty for it that when we see a little, we're like, there it is. Celebrate it, give it awards. When in fact, it is the charge for all of us. It is the call that we're all called to. In Galatians 5:22, it says, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. That means when we're in the Spirit, when we are in our spirit, when we are planting that seed, the result is kindness. That's what comes forth from us. Does kindness matter? How much does it matter? I think that this is an overlooked and an underutilized power that we hold, especially when it comes to the power we have as individuals and as community to impact our environment and our world. Who doesn't want to live in a loving, kind world? I was recently on a family trip, and we had the great gift of taking a cruise to Alaska together. And it was a great time together. One of the things that's relevant to this conversation right here is a moment that I had in the food area. If anyone's been to a cafeteria or a buffet or a food area, are you starting to get an idea of what I might be talking about? Put up a bunch of hungry people near food, and does it bring out their kindest selves? I had one moment that I went up to grab some food and to bring it back down to my room. And I was there in the buffet line, getting ready to get my eggs, and there were people behind me that were hungry, and there was this man behind me in particular. And it's not like I was, who knows what I was doing? You know how when you're driving and you're like, yeah, probably if I saw myself, I would have yelled at me too. Maybe. But I was there getting it, and I stepped back, and I'm indecisive. Well, I don't want to affirm that, but anyway. I stepped back, probably like I was going to leave, and then I stepped back in and did something different, right? But when I stepped back getting ready to leave, let's say this nicely, he was right there. And I stepped back into him, right? To which he said, Jesus Christ, lady. And I was like, all of the incarnations of Erin McCabe came to the forefront. Like, which one shall I use? Do I use Irish Erin McCabe that really knows how to, like, you want everyone here to talk about what just happened? Because we can have a community conversation. Like, you wish sometimes you could put a sticker, like, on it, beware of that person, And I just, let him come and step aside. But I realized I just took a moment to just breathe into it, right? Rather than react, I let all the reactions go off like fireworks in my head. And it was a beautiful fireworks experience. It's like a Jim Carrey movie. And so they went off in my head, but then I just breathed because I could tell it really affected me. It's like on multiple levels. Like on one level, it was just like, oops, that was no big deal. Really? Jesus Christ? Like, you got to say that to me? Like, you got to say that? Like, and like, we all have to be here together. Like, is that not a champagne problem that I just like pop back? Like, is that really that? And then just into like, oh, how sick and how gross and how sad that this is, oh, the world and people, oh, and all these other times that this is happening. Oh my God, what's happening to our world? And people have gotten so ugly and, oh, this name calling and this and that. Oh, and I'm just feeling it all ricocheting through my body and just realizing this feeling of yuck. Just yuck. And in my little world, it's like I can either let it go and do my own work, because, in 2 seconds you can just go, okay, so many good people in the world, so many amazing things happening, so many opportunities for love. I am that person. I'm sure I've said it in my mind. I try not to say things like that out loud. For sure I've said them in my mind. And the opportunity and the possibility to just walk away. But then a little bit of my Irish side and a little bit of my spiritual practice came together to get married, and I just walked back up to the person. As I stood there for a while and just, and then I just walked back up to the man, and I gently put my hand on his shoulder, which could have been dangerous, but I gently put my hand on his shoulder and said, "Sir, I'm a human being that stepped back into another human being, and I'm sorry that that offended you so much. I hope you have a happy 4th of July." And it took all of me to mean that. Do you hear me? But I just breathed doing it. And his energy softened. And he just said, "It's okay, no worries. It's okay." And I just walked away. And funny enough, when I walked away, I'm walking this way around to something else, and this young lady, probably between like 11 and 14 years old, as I'm walking with my plate, she bumps right into me. Right? To which we both go at the same time, "Oops, sorry." Okay. And it was just this beautiful interaction of love and light. And I just looked at her and I just left that room feeling like, at least the kids get it. And thinking, now we just need training programs where 11-year-old young ladies train 65-year-old men about loving kindness. But it's funny, isn't it, that it makes a difference. How we show up makes a difference. You make a difference in people's lives. Now, maybe we don't think of ourselves as unkind people or people that really need to practice and work on kindness, but if we're even neutral about it, we are sitting on a gold mine. If we're neutral, we have something to give that has the power to insulate people from all of the other stuff, from all of the moments of negativity that may affect them, from all of the bumping and the bruising and the turning and all of those things that could happen around them. We have the antidote. We have the insulation. Because to underestimate the power of a moment of kindness, it's just not to be underestimated. Have you ever had one of those days where you're just swirling down the toilet? And you had someone, maybe you don't even know them, right? But they just showed up in a way that was kind, that was loving, right? And it made the difference. It gives us hope. It gives us hope, and so often we don't utilize that power. Izzy Victoria Odessa, an author, said, even though you cannot be responsible for someone else's feelings, perspective on life, and self-esteem, do not contribute to their struggle. Do not contribute to their struggle. Be kind. Be kind. We have entered a day and age where name calling seems to be more common. Where it used to be, that's what we worked with kids on, that's what we sat down with children and we said, sweetheart, honey, let's look at these words you're choosing. And now it's running rampant. It's all over, isn't it? When I was young, my parents didn't do what some of our beloveds here, Julie and Denise Garner, they have 2 boys. They told me the other day that each year when they were little, they got a new word, like a new, when they got older, they got a new bad word that they could use. And they used that as a system so that they could kind of help manage how many, they use it. Eventually they're going to be using probably all of them when they want to. But so they would give them maybe starts with shucks or stinkers or whatever it is, but they would go through them. My dad didn't get that memo. So when I got to be a certain age, things were flying out of my mouth. I'm sure I was not too much fun to be around in that department. And we were in the house raising 2 little boys. And so my dad, in his wisdom, he did a couple of things. But one of the things that I remember is that he would always talk to me about using your words intelligently. And he would say, when you use a curse word, when you use something like name calling, anything like that, to describe how you're feeling or something in the world or someone else, there's a lack of intelligence applied there. Because someone that's skillful with their words doesn't nutshell it in a word. They can actually flower it out to describe what they're feeling, what they need, or what they mean. So a really good indicator of an awakened personality or an evolved communication is that you have words to describe what you're feeling. Right? Just like the way if you say just I'm depressed, there's a million other things. If you say whatever, we call them bad words, not really bad words, but whatever word, right? There are a load of meanings under that. And what can happen when we start diving into expressing ourselves more deeply is that we begin to soften and the world begins to soften. Because we cannot hide behind the ignorance of name-calling, labels, and shouting words that are very elementary and very easy to dish out. We actually have to begin, when we let go of that, we have to begin having real conversations. Maybe the man behind me would have just said, I'm so frustrated. Or I feel like you're taking too long. But a conversation would have had to ensue. Humanity would have had to happen in that moment. We can have all of the good and the goods in our lives and in our world, but if people are hateful, ugly, and unkind, it will be a pollution no one can escape. It takes a lot of energy to insulate from that. If you've had a day where you had multiple blows, when you do kind of emotional work to realize how you get to a mind space that you're in a day, you start just noting things, not getting too far into them, but just noting when things happen rather than just skirting by them. So you just make a little note. Okay, someone cut me off. Okay, I did this. I had that argument. I did that. And then you can kind of do an inventory at the end of the day. And if you get to a point where you're kind of exhausted or you have some emotion that you're wondering, where did this come from? You can go, oh, that makes sense. I saw it building up. Or I saw it building up and I could do something about it. But it takes a lot of energy to reverse that, and that energy can be spent on creating good rather than neutralizing the negative, right? Now let's look at the benefits of kindness. Do you believe that kindness can have some benefits? There's actually research on kindness. According to Lee Rowland is the director of research at kindness.org, and he's also an associate researcher at University of Oxford. But he says this: being kind to others, whether or not we are close to them, may be inherently rewarding for us and activate an evolved neurobiological system involved in caring for others. He also suggests that observing kindness is a way of noticing the good around us rather than seeing a world full of stress, bad news, which can boost our mood. So there is actually a study that's been done. What type of kindness will make you happiest? The type of kindness where you are being kind to yourself, self-kindness, kindness where you're being kind to someone else, or kindness where you're just observing kindness around you. You're observing acts of kindness happen. And the research showed that it really just doesn't matter. They thought they would find something. And in old studies where they reflectively checked back with people about past times, they thought that there was a difference. But the later studies are showing when they actually say, you practice this, and you practice this, and let's come together, that all of the people received benefits. That you actually got a benefit from seeing kindness in action. So not only can we transform our world, but we can transform our inner world. In Buddhism, there's a practice called the metta practice. A metta practice is a practice of loving kindness. It's a practice of generating an energy field of loving kindness. And it's key in Buddhism. Most people that practice this spiritual path spend time in metta practice. And so to simplify the practice, it is calming oneself down, just getting comfortable, connecting with the breath and connecting with the self, connecting with the heart, opening up the heart, maybe placing your hand on it, but opening up the heart and beginning to think about kindness, think about loving things that have happened. Just generate a field of kindness. And then to move from that generative feeling into thinking of self and other, people that you know, people that you don't know, people that you feel good about, people that you feel negative about, people that you feel neutral about. And to begin a practice of cultivating that kind energy. And just visualizing it, feeling it, having a full-bodied experience, and passing it on, paying it forward. Using a mantra, which in Unity we use affirmations, but it's the equivalent in Buddhism. Using a mantra when you're doing it with self and knowing that the words you speak for self are for all of humanity, all of the planet, all sentient beings, all life. You might say, may I be happy. May I be at ease. May I be at peace. May I be safe. May I be filled with loving kindness. It's a practice we can all benefit from, because the opposite of kindness creates useless suffering. Useless suffering. The author Rashid Ogunluru said, any fool can break something, criticize something, or tear things apart. It takes a far more skilled, wise, and kind soul to build something, nurture someone, fix things, and help others thrive over time. So the keys: skillful communication, a loving kindness practice, and rising to the call to act out the God you believe in. Act out the God you believe in. The author Heather Wolf said, "Use your voice for good in this world. There are many who tear down, but it is those who build up that truly touch hearts and transform lives." Namaste.